Good afternoon and welcome to 802 Scoop, live from the Inside Scoop studio at 185 North Main Street in Barre. This afternoon I have our final candidate interview for City Council Ward 1, Beth
Hilgartner.
And she's going to introduce herself, let us know a little bit about her, ties to the community, let's say, and a little bit about your life and why you chose to step up and run for council. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate
pleasure.
it. So I'm Beth Hilgartner. I'm not a face that you'll necessarily know because we've been back in Barre for a couple of years now. I live in the house that's on the corner of Camp and Hill, the big brick house, and we've done a lot of work to the house, and that's been kind of fun. But we have ties to the community that are longstanding. When we were first married, my husband Ernie Drown, was a Barre boy, grew up here. My mother and her family grew up in Montpelier, and that was funny when my grandparents met Ernie's parents, and that was sort of like Barre, Montpelier, and it was like, stop it.
That's very true.
But it was, yeah. but it was there. So even though I have some ties to Montpelier, I'm really a Barre person at heart. And Ernie was the librarian at the Aldrich when we were first married, and I worked at the Granite Bank. So, like I said, we have ties to an older period in Barre's history, relatively recent history, because I'm not that old. But we were away for 30, 35 years or so, and then we're back. And I'm delighted to be back. And there are a couple of things that have been important in my decision to run for council. And one of the things was, we bought the house in September, and then the next July were the floods. And that was actually a real eye-opener for me in a good way, because it was so impressive how, the day after the rain stopped, everybody was down there. They had their gloves and their boots and their shovels, and they were helping getting their neighbors dug out and the downtown businesses back up and running, and everybody just sort of rolled their sleeves up. And much as I enjoy Montpelier, I kind of watched them sort of go, oh, what are we going to do? Oh, and Barre was doing it. And I thought, well, that is a really strong community. The churches got involved, the Rainbow Community Center got involved, individual people got involved. It was just amazing to see everybody pull together in that way. And I thought, yeah, this is something that we need to nurture and strengthen. And it flies in the face of the bad publicity that we sometimes get about all the problems and all this. But I think that we need to sort of rise above all that. Because this is a great place. It's a great place now, and it can be a better place. So that was one of the big drivers. And the other one is, I spent my time away from Barre being an Episcopal priest and working in congregations and doing a lot of work on community development and good decision-making processes. And, I've been sort of dabbling at the edges of the council and going to the meetings via Zoom and all that sort of thing. And looking at the way decisions are being made now, I see I'm a process geek. I like, I know how to set up processes where we end up coming up with a good decision at the end of it. And I'm used to working with communities that have a strong need to keep all the members engaged and comfortable with the direction of the community, whether it's a church community or whether it's a nonprofit, which is another area I've done a lot of work. Those aren't places that have taxes that you have to pay by law. Those are places that people support because they value the community, they value the work that the community is doing, or they're very interested in supporting the enterprise that the nonprofit is putting forward. And when you lose that kind of connection, the community suffers. The nonprofits go out of business. The church is closed. Sad things happen, and so I really want to see us develop a stronger community and a better set of tools for making good decisions. Because what I see is that things get, combative, and that's a normal outgrowth of the way that we, do politics these days, is to divide people. But when I look at the people in the room at the council meeting, the councilors and the mayor and the citizens who are concerned and are there and engaged, I realize that every single person in that room has the best interests of Barre at their heart. They want what's best for Barre. They may not all agree, or we may not all agree on the details of how to get there, but I want to see us start from that place of unity, that we all want what's best for Barre, and not start from a place where the decisions that may get set up to have a group of winners and a group of losers, or where people set up the political process to have heroes and villains, because I don't think there are heroes and villains. And as far as that goes, I've had a lot of experience working with people who don't agree with me. And I've had a lot of experience of getting people into places where they do recognize the commonality of what we share and don't devolve into sort of the schism, the division that is so common these days. So that's what, it's that I love Barre, and I think at this time in Barre's life, I have some skills and some experience that would be extremely valuable on the council. So I'm putting my name forward and I'm doing all this stuff.
So when we talk about division and things that are happening in the city here right now, let's jump into one of the big topics, most recently, but the crime and the use of cameras, and how are we going to, maybe have an ordinance, or how are we going to work with what's happening right now in the community? How would you see yourself dealing with some of these situations?
Well, let me give you an example of how I analyze issues. Because I was present via Zoom at the council meeting where the cameras were discussed, and where the vote was taken. And the thing that really struck me was that this was it was a flawed process, and not because anyone's wrong or evil or bad, but because it didn't have enough input early from people. So let me explain what I mean. So there's the police advisory committee. Okay, there was and they came with their proposal. This is what the police need. This is but there were concerns that I think were raised for the first time at the meeting. There were concerns about the vendor that we're going with. I remember the question being asked by one of the counselors, did you look at other vendors? And the answer was, well, no, we didn't look at other vendors, and there may have been reasons why they didn't, we have a history with this vendor, but, and we did look at, we talked to other municipalities that had this and asked them if they hadn't had any problems and all that, but that was a flag for me, because multiple bids is like one of those basic fiduciary responsibilities. And so immediately I felt like the situation had, that the council was being asked to make a decision before they really had everything they needed for that decision. And then the other thing that happened was there wasn't, the way that the question got framed, the way that the vote was framed was that you either had to be for the business owners want this. Okay, I hear that. I'm not opposed categorically or necessarily or in principle to cameras and surveillance. I'm very interested in listening to everybody's side and making sure that we come up with a solution that addresses, can't answer everyone's needs, but at least everyone has the assurance that they were heard and that their concerns were taken into account. And what actually ended up happening was the question got divided into sort of, do you support the business owners, or are you, part of this group that, I don't think anyone actually used the phrase left-wing nut jobs, but that was a very strong sense that I had, was that, oh, these people who, don't approve of these tools that the police and the other people want. And that isn't the best way to structure a decision that everyone's going to have to live with. So, what I would have done in a good process, or a better process, because nothing in this world is perfect, is you would have had the public input part earlier. So the committee would be charged with, and charges to committees so they know what they're supposed to be looking at and where they're supposed to go are really important. So you charge the committee that's in charge, whether it's a public safety committee or whether it's the police advisory committee or whoever it is, you charge them with looking into this, and you give them the resources and tools and direction to set up a process that allows for a lot of public input. And this doesn't mean you have a giant committee, because giant committees are really hard to get everybody present and all the rest, but that the committees always have, before they draft their proposal, they have a process by which they hear the concerns, and they can find the people who have special lived experience or expertise to help them advise on each proposal. So when the proposal comes to council, council has the assurance that adequate fiduciary due diligence was done, that the question about the vendor, so in that specific instance, so there, if you'd looked at several vendors, you might have come to the same decision. I'm not going to second guess that part, but you would know that this vendor has these, nothing's perfect. This vendor has these problems. This vendor has these other problems. This vendor is, very good but really, really, really expensive. This vendor is, a little shit. And you can compare and make a reasonable decision on what the best use of Barre funds is. And it's hard to do that if you don't have a lot of information. That's just one, the sort of multiple bids. And I think that there is enough love for Barre and wanting things to be good and for people to feel safe, so that all the different feeling level things that got talked about, the question of people feeling safer. Now, there wasn't research done, and maybe there never will be, but there wasn't research done that somebody could point to and said, we took a survey or we did this and we asked these people, and 47% said that they don't feel safe downtown, but they would feel safer if there were cameras. And 25% didn't care, and some people didn't want us. There wasn't any sort of sense that anything had happened, except that the business owners and a few residents had said, we would feel safer, or we think this will make other people feel safer, which was what I kept hearing. This will make people feel safer. Well, will it make you feel safer? Which was the question I was dying to ask. Um, you know, and because ascribing feeling stuff to other people isn't always accurate. You know, I can talk about my feelings. You can talk about your feelings. But if you talk about my feelings, you might be wrong, unless you ask me, and then it's different. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And so the second part of that being, so we talked about the cameras, but what about if the cameras aren't the answer? Is an ordinance the answer?
Again,
they discussed a few weeks back, maybe a month ago now, the possibility of having an ordinance for panhandling, aggressive panhandling, to be specific. Where do you stand as far as support for something like that goes?
again, I mean, where I stand for all of these issues is I want us to come together and talk about them together, because there are people who, there are people who feel very strongly that aggressive panhandling is a serious problem and is scary, and there are people who don't share that. Mm-hmm. My own experience has been, and I've been in lots of situations where people have asked me for money when I'm either not in a position to give them money or I'm not going to give them money. And I have generally found that, and this is not here, I haven't experienced aggressive panhandling here, but in big cities, in Boston and other places, I have found that if you look the person in the eye and you say, I'm sorry you're having a hard day, and I wish I could help, but I can't right now, and then you keep walking, that's the end of it. People want to be seen as human beings and not as a problem, generally. Now, there may be specific people in this situation. I don't know, because like I said, I haven't had that experience. There may be specific people who have specific issues and specific patterns, but that's another place where you get more input from the community and you help people deal with not just saying the answer is to legislate something, but also to give people some strategies for behaving to the people who are making these requests, remembering that they're our neighbors too. And that humanizes the situation. It's another example of a way that you can keep from setting things up as a combat or an argument or a fight or an issue with a hero and a villain. You say, these people are all neighbors. Maybe an ordinance is the answer. But I'd want to explore a whole lot of other options rather than going straight to the one that, in my view, divides people in ways that aren't really very helpful on a community level.
So we do have a couple of comments in regards to the cameras. Back to the flood. First, Glenn Brummer says, good afternoon. And Linda Otis Kucher says that Barre has a very helpful community. Mm-hmm. And she also says it should have gone out to sealed bids just like other city purchases. So
Indeed.
Meaning the cameras.
Yeah.
And then Tina says, why don't the voices of business owners and community members that are all over Facebook talking about, their situations that they've experienced with some of this, why don't they count as?
Well, we were talking before we started about the distance that devices put between people. And, I would never say that Facebook is an inherent evil. I don't think it is. I think it does allow people to connect in different ways. But I have observed that people feel much freer in the context of social media to say things they would never say to somebody directly. So there's an awful lot of negativity that gets put into the public, into the social media feed that I'm not sure is really warranted or would come up in a face-to-face meeting, a community meeting where we talked about this issue. I think that people would have more filters and more empathy for other views if we were sitting in a room together. So that's one of the reasons why, I think those voices do count, but I think there are better ways to get that input that don't involve necessarily taking something whole cloth from social media and saying, oh, these people are saying this, because there is that very definite sense that I have and have experienced that people are really much more willing to be pretty negative and pretty dismissive, and that goes on both sides, in social media. And it's very hard to arrive at nuance when you're trying to talk to somebody through a medium like texting or the comments on the social media. It's very difficult to arrive at nuance, to catch the tone and the affect of the person who's talking and read their body language and figure out whether they're, angry or upset or frightened or what. It's very hard. It's very hard to read that from the little words that show up on the screen. So that's where I am on that.
So we'll switch gears. We pretty much it's, I like to ask everybody the same sorts of things. And right now we know that the city has a lot going on infrastructure-wise. There's a lot of, there's paving that needs to be done. There's upgrades to the water treatment center. There's all kinds of things that the city is facing. Not only in upgrades, but financially as well. Mm-hmm. And then add the housing piece to that, and it's a whole new mix. What resource or what do you feel you could bring to the table as far as kind of helping that process move forward?
Okay, there are a lot of moving pieces in that. There's the flood relief. There's and there's all the things that you mentioned there. And I do think that one of the things that I can bring to this is an awareness of how those things interact. And also, the pieces that get forgotten about or left out of the discussion. When we talk about taxes and the fact that you don't have the right to say, I'm not paying my taxes because I don't approve of what the city is doing. And that's the way taxation works. But I think one of the things that we have to remember is that the financial piece is also tied to the tax base and growing the tax base. And there are things that we can look at that don't get looked at very much or don't seem to have been looked at very much that might help with that. There are empty buildings that are being, not taken care of and not updated and not used. Maybe they should be taxed differently so that we encourage people to maintain their property. But we do things that grow the tax base, that make it clear that we love Barre and that this is a great place to be, and that we want. We want new businesses, we want new development, we want new housing, we want people to do these things with us, not to us, and not for us, but with us. And that's really critical, the with us piece. That's the getting everybody involved in the discussion. And it also is part of setting what the priorities are. So, everybody that I talk to says, one of the questions I always get is, are you going to fix the potholes? Because, that's... And, the short answer is yes, that has to happen, absolutely. Is it the most important thing? Well, it's really on the top of a lot of people's minds, so maybe it is the most important thing. But again, that's something you have to be talking to your constituents about that. I had a conversation with somebody who said, my taxes are too high for what I'm getting. And what are you going to do about that? And are you going to bring taxes down? Are the expenses going to get less? And honestly, I have to say, no, I don't think the expenses are going to get less. The taxes will go down if we succeed in building out the tax base, and so that we're spreading the burden among more people. And I do think we need to do that. But then I have a question for you. And I said this to this person. I said, I have a question for you. Would you feel differently about paying your taxes if you felt like you had an authentic voice in how the money was spent? And she said, yes. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to give everybody an authentic voice, a place at the table, and a part of the process. And I know how to do that. And so that's where I am with what do we do with this? Yeah, there are a lot of problems. What do we do with them? We figure out how to address them in a way that brings people together to solve them, rather than dividing people into little camps about what's most important and who's on the right side or the wrong side. Because it's together, it's like the flood stuff, together we can do enormous things. And that's one of the major strengths of this community, and I want to foster that and bring that out and make it work even better.
So do you believe that probably more of the community forums and the community meetings that like they held when right after the floods, and recently there was one done for the safety community safety forum
Sure.
that was done. Do you believe that more of those need to be done?
I do. I mean, maybe not necessarily as special events, but this is the approach that I would take. I mean, we have this committee structure in the city that uses volunteer people who are interested in issues. So there's the police advisory committee, and there's the cow pasture committee, and there's there are a bunch of the transportation committee, public works. That's the place. Those committees are the places that can, if they're empowered to do it, they can organize the community input for the projects that they're going to undertake. And in order to do that, they have to have a clear charge. They have to have the information about what resources are available to each of the committees for the projects that they want to do. And they have to have some help with the communication, because right now I think what happens, and I've talked to a lot of people who are either on committees or have been on committees and got frustrated and quit. What happens now is the committees get together, they meet, they talk, they report out to council. They don't have any authority, and they don't have any information really about how the city budget is going to be structured, and they don't have the charge to come up with a specific proposal, like the cameras. I think my guess, and of course I don't know this because I'm not I haven't been involved in the behind the scenes conversations that go on, but my guess would be that what we see in that model is we see a few people who are sort of tapped as the experts in the field who say, yes, they have important expertise that needs to be listened to, but they're not the only voices. But they come up with something, and then they present it to council, and the decision gets made, and it's up or down. But it's also not clear that the proposal has had enough input. Does that make sense? Mm. So I think I would start by working on the council structure and making sure that the committee structure, and making sure that the committees have the resources and the expertise and the help to put together the proposals that will then come to council for council to decide about. And without an intimate knowledge of all the players and all the moving parts, it's hard for me to sort of come up with here's my answer. But that's where to start. And that's where I think those community input events are most efficiently organized, around a specific, not a sort of a general, what are we going to do about the North End? I mean, that was valuable. There have been a lot of those discussions about the flood remediation, although it's valuable, but it's too big. If you say, what are we going to do about this particular piece of this question? What are we going to do about cameras? What are we going to do about, addressing the individuals who, what was the phrase that was used, the lifestyle crimes, am I right about that? So there are 8 individuals who account for most of the police encounters.
Right, the quality of life. Yeah.
The quality of, that's it, not lifestyle, quality of life questions. So you identify a specific issue that needs attention, and then you get people together to talk about how to do it. You include the experts that are, in council, on council, on staff. You also include, in that particular instance, you include the experts like the people who are in the helping professions, like Washington County Mental Health, and the organizations that provide services to people who need them, and stuff like that. And then the committee brings a proposal to council that has a little more. We used to say that this idea has legs, right? That it has a little more, ability to be moved into, it's slotted into a place in the city budget and the city agenda.
So I think that I know what you're going to say, because I kind of feel like you've answered this a little bit, but I've asked everyone the same question. If the very first day that you take a seat as a council member, if you were to win the seat, what would you, if you could change just one thing immediately, what would it be?
I think that the thing I would change is, now, remember, I'm a process geek, right? And I actually know that I can't change anything, that if is unrealistic. So, I can't say, I want world, I'd make world peace and Barre would be perfect, yeah, right, it's not going to happen. But what I would do is I would start the process of making council and the committee structure and the whole, the whole idea of how we govern ourselves, because this is a democracy, it's a form of self-government. I would work on the whole ideal of how we do it so that we end up working together out of that sense of shared purpose and unity and love of Barre, instead of working against each other out of the little silos of the little silos of this issue is important, it's my issue, and it's most important. Years and years and years ago, I remember giving my brother, I have an older brother, 2 younger brothers and a younger sister. My older brother is a year and a half older than me, and he knows everything. You probably have a brother like that too. But anyway, I remember I found this wonderful, I thought it was wonderful, poster, back when we were kids. And it had a photograph of this lion, this gorgeous lion, on this huge wicker throne. And the lion was sort of sprawled out there. And the caption was, "It's my opinion and it's very true." And I thought it was hysterical. My brother didn't think it was funny, which taught me something, actually. But I think that we fall into that trap of thinking that our way of looking at things is the only way. And I would really like to change that so that we can use all the different viewpoints and find a way to incorporate more community connection, because that's what we really need.
In speaking of communication and connection, how is it that constituents can reach out to you if they have a question or concern? And would you continue that if you were to take a seat on the council?
Absolutely. I have a email. It's beth.h.4.council@gmail.com.
Okay.
And so there's email. I'm a little hesitant about giving my phone number out on the internet waves, but I'm certainly willing to be contacted by telephone.
Yeah, if somebody sent you
If somebody sent me a private message, I would
and
send
said,
them
could I have your phone
yeah,
number, or
yeah,
send you a message
absolutely.
with their
Sent
number,
me a
you would
message
return
with their
a
number,
call.
I would return calls.
Okay.
I'm not, I know that the internet is, just open season on everything. And so I don't want to give you my phone number.
I think this auto-corrected to the number 4
What?
for Beth.h.
No. It shouldn't. It
Yeah,
should be
and
FOR.
so I will fix it
Okay,
when
okay,
we're
yeah.
all done.
Yeah.
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 Um,
But
But
also
email's the
you can
best.
also email's good. If it's not comfortable for you, you email me and tell me your phone number, and I'll call you and talk to you. If you don't have email, if you do use Facebook, I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page that's just under my name, Beth Hilgartner. And I'm not on Facebook every single day, but you can send me a private message, and I'll get back to you. I'm good about that. And I'm open to that. And the other email, I have another email that's not election related that I'm willing to put out there because it's my sort of internet email, and that is pkplives. It's a PKP and then the word LIVES with no dots or anything @gmail.com. But it's easier to remember Beth H for council.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get that out there for everyone, just in case anybody has any questions or concerns. And and then, of course, we'll ask that you go back later and just look through, because not everyone will be able to join us live and participate. So you can go back through, you can read through the comments, answer any questions that might come up, or contact someone that may need to talk to you. They may post in here, and you can message that way and just let them know how to contact you. But so let's kind of, and it seems weird to say, because it's like I know, it's almost like I know what you're going to say, but let's kind of wrap it up by saying, telling us why vote for Beth.
Vote for me because I want to represent you in the most effective way that can be done. And you don't even have to be in Ward 1. I mean, you can't vote for me if you're not in Ward 1. But I want to represent Barre, all of Barre. And I think that part of representing Barre in the most effective way possible is to make sure that we're working out of that shared understanding that we all want what's best for Barre, and that we can talk about the differences of opinion in respectful and careful ways, so that everybody's point of view is heard, and that whatever compromises, because of course nobody gets everything that they want, but whatever compromises are made with everybody's input, so that it isn't a little, it's not a little cadre of people who make all the decisions and then tell you that you have to either support them or not support them, because that isn't community. That doesn't connect us. Sometimes it's efficient to do it that way, but it's not good process. So I'm really all about making sure that all the voices are heard, and that the decisions that get made are the ones that work the best for the community as a whole.
Well, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing with us, and remind everybody the vote is May 13th, and
Absolutely.
that takes place in the city at the Barre Auditorium. You can from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And get out there and vote. No matter who you're voting for or what you're doing, it's just really important that you make sure that your voice is heard. And I think it's getting better where people are starting to use absentee and starting to go into actually the polls and vote. For a lot of years, the numbers were way down, but I think it is getting better. People are starting to come out and really talk more and be open about things that are happening. And
I
so
would
come on
also
out.
just say, if you can't make it to the May 13th vote, you can still go to the city clerk's office during regular business hours and vote in
Yes.
person there. I mean, it doesn't require an absentee, it's not an absentee ballot. You can just go in there and vote, and that will be counted too. So do remember that I'm busy on the 13th isn't a good excuse.
Yeah, there are all
There are
kinds
lots
of
of
ways
alternatives, yeah.
to vote now, and,
Yeah.
and definitely, and even on the day of, there are a lot of people, if you are someone who would like to go directly to the polls, but have, reasons that you cannot get there, maybe you don't have a car, maybe you have a disability, maybe there are people that will bring you to the polls. Always there are volunteers willing and able to do that, and yeah, and I, of course, think the best thing about Election Day is that 802 Scoop will be there again with donuts in the morning, homemade donuts from my friend Sharon, and we'll be serving hot dogs and snacks and water all afternoon to anybody that comes up. And my favorite part about that is that people stand around and talk to each other. They have a bite to eat, they stand around, they talk to each other, and I've learned a lot of things standing around the grill on Election Day. So that's one of my most favorite parts of the day.
Another wonderful way to build community.
So, but thank you again for coming, and
You're welcome.
good luck on May 13th.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, guys, there's no Barre Beat tonight because there is no city council tomorrow. However, Michael and I will be here with you tomorrow night at 7 with Carol Dawes. So she'll be in. I will be here tomorrow at 4 with race driver Stephen Donahue. He's in the number 26 One Credit Union car this year. Really cool looking car. I got to see them over the weekend right out back here at Summer Street Tavern for their car show. And they had a great turnout despite the weather. It was not so nice, but it's always good to see the community come out and support these local drivers and a local business that is trying to bring them something new and kind of cool and something to do. So thank you to Tina and everyone over at Summer Street Tavern for hosting, and thank you all for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow.